Poppy Playtime, a game that began as a colourful indie horror title, quickly became one of the most mysterious and theory-rich universes in modern horror gaming. Behind the smiling toys and catchy marketing lies a story of corporate cruelty, human experimentation, and something far more mysterious than anyone could ever have expected. Today we're diving deep into the Poppy Playtime universe, from the surface level facts that every player may know down to the hidden lore, cut content, and theories that connect this game to something much darker. From Chapter 1 all the way to the multiplayer game that hides multiple VHS tapes hidden right beneath our noses. Poppy's Playtime is rich with lore, eager to be explored. As Chapter 5 is slowly awaiting all of us to get our hands on it, we will slowly dive deeper into the theories that may be proven in this chapter. Will this be the last chapter of the game series? Who knows, because we do know there is a movie installment on the way. However, right now, we will be diving deep into the universe of Poppy Playtime. Now, you can't talk about Poppy's Playtime without talking about the main character that you may not expect. There was always one character that drew everybody to this game. Not Poppy herself, but the character known as Huggy Wuggy. The blue mascot of Playtime Co. was instantly recognizable, as he's the first major antagonist players encounter in Chapter 1, chasing you through the vents before falling to his quote-unquote death. This character was instantly a horror mascot icon in my opinion, as instantly, not only is Poppy Playtime easily one of the best mascot horror games to come out in recent years, but Huggy Wuggy stands the test of time, showing how impactful of a character he truly is. This character is vicious, vile, and very, very aggressive. It doesn't have any other aspect of mentality other than to kill or be killed. The best example of this is in the VHS tapes that Mob Entertainment released on their YouTube channel, as we see Huggy Wuggy do menacing things to the employees of Playtime Co. as he escapes the captivity within the facilities. However, Huggy Wuggy is not the only threat in the Poppy Playtime universe, as Playtime Co. themselves is very much a massive antagonist, as the toy company that once produced beloved children's toys until everything went wrong, as the factory now stands abandoned, filled with living toys, also known as the enemies that we encounter behind each chapter. Playtime Co. is one of the most confusing aspects of this story, as we know there is human experimentation going on. However, it's not until Chapter 3 to where the true story shines through and shows how deeply disturbing this story actually is. However, not just that, but the VHS tapes that are scattered throughout the games serve as both tutorials and lore drops, as they reveal the company's dark experiments and the missing employees. One in particular stands out above the rest, and that is the dinosaurs. This little toy is by far one of the most sad VHS tapes that we've seen in the universe so far, as we see a man who is just simply trying to be better gets turned into this little dinosaur toy, and yet is still haunted by the toys around him, as he's consistently beaten up and broken by the other toys.
On my part, but I don't believe he knows where he is or what's happened to him. To make matters worse, the other experiments could tell 1199 was different.
Everyone shut down the machine! Do you hear me? Somebody shut off that camera!
Behind every smiling mascot, every bright advertisement, and every child's laughter, there were experiments. Playtime Co. wasn't just a toy manufacturer, it was a front for something else. Something that blurred the line between toy and human. The experiments began as an offshoot of Playtime Co.'s Innovation Division, founded by Elliot Ludwig. The company originally sought to revolutionize entertainment, creating toys that could move, talk, and bond with children in a realistic way. But sometimes in the early 60s, a secret division known as the Bigger Bodies Initiative was formed. Its purpose was to find a way to give life to these toys. Internal logs and VHS tapes reference, quote-unquote, Project Playtime, an effort to make toys more than machines, and to make them alive. Each toy was catalogued as a part of the 1000 Experiment series. These entries known as Experiment 1006, the prototype, Experiment 1170, Huggy Wuggy, 1222, Mommy Longlegs, and Experiment 1186, Catnap. There are likely hundreds more, most undocumented or destroyed in the so-called Playtime incident. Each experiment was a fusion of organic and synthetic material. Human consciousness was transferred, forcibly, into these toys. This process is known as a transpositional consciousness transfer. Essentially, scientists attempted to move a person's mind or soul into a toy using a mix of biological tissue and chemical agents. Some theorize that the extract was derived from the red poppy flower, which can be seen underground, specifically in Chapter 1. Some believe it contained an ancient fungal organism capable of bonding with neural tissue, creating a hive mind effect, therefore being able to be controlled by the prototype. As when it combined with human remains and mechanical components, the toys didn't just move, they were remembered. To go into depth on these experiments, we must start within the experiments that are most popular, one being Mommy Longlegs, Experiment 1222. Mommy Longlegs is one of the clearest examples of a successful consciousness transfer. Records suggest that she was based on a woman volunteer, or more likely, a captured subject, whose personality survived within the toy's body. Her behavior displays emotional intelligence, parental instincts, and extreme cruelty. She refers to herself as Mommy, implying that maternal memories were intentionally exploited to make her more nurturing to the children of Playcare. However, prolonged isolation and physical mutation caused a mental collapse. She became violent toward both employee and other experiments, indicating degradation of the transferred consciousness. Once again, going into Huggy Wuggy is one of the earliest successes, as he is Experiment 1170. Designed as a friendly, comforting toy, his transformation resulted in a towering creature of flesh and fur. He retained basic motor control, intense loyalty to the factory, and animal-like intelligence, but lost all sense of humanity. Many believe the human consciousness inside Huggy was destroyed during the process, leaving only an instinctual predator. In Project Notes 1170, researchers described him as quote-unquote obedient, watchful, and easily controlled by auditory commands, suggesting early attempts to use sound conditioning, kind of similar to mind control tactics. My personal favourite of the experiments, Experiment 1186, Catnap. Chapter 3 reveals a new location, Playcare, the orphanage division of Playtime Co. Here, orphaned children were used as raw material for the next generation of experiments. Experiment 1186, codenamed Catnap, appeared to be linked to the hallucinogenic gas that used to pacify subjects, possibly made from that same poppy extract, as theoried previously. In leaked concept notes, Catnap was referred to as a caretaker and purifier, suggesting that it might have been responsible for euthanizing the failed test subjects with the hallucinogenic gas. However, all these are successes, but what is truly disturbing is the failed subjects, and there seems to be a whole lot of them. As not all experiments succeeded, hundreds, possibly thousands of failures were disposed in what's now referred to as the reject disposal unit. In-game sound logs and environmental storytelling suggest these discarded bodies may still be alive, writhing in darkness, half-conscious, begging to be freed. Some fans believe these rejects formed Experiment 1007, a mass of fused remains known officially as the Flesh Pit. The factory's final days remain unknown, but based on the scattered clues, one thing is certain. Playtime Co. didn't just create living toys, they made death irrelevant. Every soul, every experiment, and every memory was trapped inside a smiling plastic shell. And when we walk through those halls, solving puzzles and collecting those tapes, we're not exploring ruins. We're walking through a living graveyard.
It was dusk when the intruder broke into the factory. Its main lobby provided a warm welcome for all. But these days, it is an old, forgotten thing. It didn't take our lone intruder long before the first voice of the factory.
The one character that has always been theorized about is fairly obvious, and that is the prototype, 1006. Rarely seen but often mentioned, the prototype is believed to be a monstrous fusion of parts, possibly even made from multiple victims. Its intelligence and control over the other toys show that it is the true villain behind the entire organization of Playtime Co. And many have theorized themselves that this could be Elliot Ludwig or someone in the higher ups of Playtime Co. Many theories have suggested that the prototype is the one that is controlling everybody, and it seems to be the case. However, the quote, "find the flower," is something that is very intriguing, especially in Chapter 1. However, it seems to me that Poppy herself will be the source of a solution to Playtime Co.'s horrors. More specifically, to defeat the prototype himself. The prototype is one of those characters where we don't exactly know what to expect. He's been teased multiple times and been shown on multiple occasions. However, we have never got a clear view of him. It's always been arms or random legs just lingering around the location. The prototype is bound to be the most interesting chapter yet, and is that going to be in Chapter 5? That is something that is heavily speculated. However, to me, I feel like we're going to get one more chapter in the Poppy's Playtime game lore. To me, I feel like eventually maybe Chapter 5 or 6 will be the last chapters, therefore leading to the end of the series and going on to its movie franchise. Poppy's Playtime is one of those series that has multiple hidden messages. When it's been hidden VHS codes of certain tapes having corrupted symbols, or Morse code-like patterns that translate into cryptic messages, some spelling "help us" or "let me out," or the prototype's hive mind, as a darker theory suggests that the prototype can control all other toys remotely, therefore having a sense of worship. The best example being Catnap, as at the end of the Catnap boss fight, we see him kneeling before the prototype. When one toy dies, its pieces are collected and assimilated and joined into the prototype. However, the red hand is something that I've always had a big interest in the grab pack, as the grab pack to me feels like it was initially meant to be weaponized, as some may think that the grab pack was not designed for maintenance, but for containment, a prototype tool for capturing or controlling the living toys. However, what I mean by the red hand symbolism is that the red hand may symbolize a sacrifice or blood. It's the one used to activate key points tied to the experiments, and the red hand could even represent a connection to Poppy herself. However, there is multiple theories suggesting what could have happened to the Playtime co-owner himself, as rumors from concept art and early links hint that maybe the original Playtime co-owner took his own life after realizing the horrors he unleashed. However, there is something that needs to be theorized, and that is why the toys stayed in the location. The Playtime Co factory is something that has immense size, and from Chapter 1's photo, you really don't expect it to have the amount of depth in the actual facility. However, beneath the actual surface, there is miles upon miles of underground terrain, including, of course, the catnap and, of course, the doughy boss fight area. However, for me, there is something that has to be stated, and why is the toys linked to the Playtime Co factory? Is there something that's keeping them there initially? Is it the prototype? To me, I think it is the prototype because it would make sense to a level of worship. The prototype is everybody's god. However, there is one thing we have to get into, and that is the forgotten layer of this iceberg. An area of Poppy's Playtime story that is really alluded to, however not fully explored. Theories suggesting the prototype's true identity and what could be lying within. And that's what we are about to dive into. And that is the forgotten layer of Playtime Co.
That's all. Good luck.
We must begin with the VHS tape chronology. Fans discovered inconsistencies in the timestamps of the tapes, implying that some might have been recorded after the supposed shutdown, meaning someone or something was still active in the factory, whether that was the prototype or another monster lingering in the darkness, or maybe it was a human that we are yet to meet. However, going into the prototype, I've heard multiple people theorize about its true identity, and that is Elliot Ludwig, as some believe the founder himself became Experiment 1006, explaining the creature's intelligence, leadership, and focus on continuing the experiments, quote-unquote, for the future. Elliot Ludwig was someone that was definitely determined enough and had the leadership skills to lead a cult of people. As Playtime Co itself experiments, getting to the number 1006 shows the true determination of Elliot Ludwig in terms of what he wanted to find and what he wanted to do. However, everyone has their breaking point. So was Elliot Ludwig the reason of the prototype? Was he the originator of why the prototype exists in the first place? And is that why all the toys worship him? As in reality, he is their creator. To delve deeper into the audio hidden within Poppy's Playtime, in Chapter 2's soundtrack, reversed audio reveals that faint children's laughter and crying, believed, possibly, to be the remains of souls trapped within the factory, which would make a lot of sense. Especially considering the orphanage that lay beneath in Chapter 3, it is most likely a haven for the souls that remain. Again, there has been thousands upon thousands upon thousands of experiments that lay within the Playtime Co factory. However, around 90% of them have failed. As every room you enter in Poppy's Playtime, there is scattered toys, bleeding, remnants of blood hidden along the chaos, all leading to a body. That body belonged to someone, to multiple people, and possibly two at the same time. The experiments are something that are so deeply traumatic in this series that still haven't fully been developed. So what does the future even hold for how disturbing and how dark these experiments truly went? And that is something that is truly terrifying and intriguing to see how far they truly go. However, we must delve deeper into the void of this iceberg, to the conclusion of what's going on at Playtime Co. And that is delving in to the void. Many theories have suggested itself that the prototype may actually control us as a player, as a disturbing theory suggests the player is once again another experiment, being guided by the prototype to free Poppy and the other test subjects, and in the end, to free him. A lot of people have theorized that Poppy herself has an underlying demeanor, that she is in fact working with the prototype itself, which would make a lot of sense, especially considering in Chapter 2 when Mommy Longlegs grabs Poppy, why doesn't she kill her? Why does she spare her? Now yes, that may go down into her maternal identity and parental identity, however, if she's being controlled by the prototype and doing his bidding, why doesn't she finish the job? The factory's consciousness is something that definitely has to be explained. The factory itself seems alive. Every wall, every machine, every living organism of steel and flesh feeds on the human souls that enter. The Playtime Co. factory itself has yet to have any survivors. When we enter upon these walls, every audio log all suggests of why are we here? What are we trying to find? Yes, we got the answer of the hour of joy and what originally happened to those on the day. However, why are we here? Once we find out the true meaning of what happened to those employees back in the day, our final mission goes on to try and kill the prototype. However, there's always been one thing I've always wondered about Poppy's playtime, and that is a theory I had for myself, and that is the loop theory. It proposed that Poppy playtime doesn't take place in a linear timeline. Instead, the player is reliving the same events repeatedly. Each playthrough isn't a retry or a restart. It's a new consciousness waking inside a reused body, repeating the same descent into the factory. The factory itself may act as a metaphysical machine, kind of a soul recycler, as every time you quote-unquote die, your memories are wiped and replaced with a new consciousness implanted into another test subject. All in order to be a metaphor for the experiments themselves. The toys and VHS tapes can remain constant because they exist outside this temporal loop. They've been here forever, watching new versions of you fall into the same trap. Evidence for this comes from the chronology inconsistencies in the VHS tapes. Some tapes show dates yet years apart, yet all seem current. Others mention experiments that should no longer exist. The implication that time doesn't move normally inside Playtime Co. The factory is almost frozen in a somewhat endless cycle, forcing human souls to replay their suffering forever, all contained in a little VHS cassette. However, possibly in my opinion the most tragic and most terrifying theory of all, and that is that Poppy is actually the prototype's daughter. As why else would Poppy be constrained to a box? Why else would Poppy be spared on multiple occasions by the prototype? And that is that maybe, according to the fragments of dialogue, that Poppy herself may be the daughter of Playtime co-founder Elliot Ludwig. As Elliot's daughter died young, this is much suggested in the official biography material that her death sent him into a grief-fueled obsession. He poured his fortune into finding a way to bring her back, and thus began the Bigger Bodies Initiative. The Poppy doll, created as the first quote-unquote living toy, speaks softly, like a child. She's self-aware, but restrained, as if unsure where she is. If Poppy truly carries the consciousness of Elliot's daughter, it would mean the prototype and Poppy share a familial bond. One, the father now a monstrous being of wires and flesh that seeks to continue his work, while the other, the daughter, is trapped in a porcelain silk that seeks release. The relationship resembles a dark mirror of resurrection, an eternal father trying to resurrect its child, only to damn her to eternal life within the factory's walls itself. As we delve into the final part, as that may be the true ending that is waiting for us all. And that is that true ending of Poppy winning. That Poppy is a true villain, and once again aiding the theory that Poppy is helping the prototype. As in chapter 2, her dialogue shifts. At first it was thankful, then manipulative, and finally controlling. At the end of chapter 2, she prevents the player from escaping, saying quote unquote, "I thought I could help you, but you're not ready to leave. Not yet." This line implies intent, that she needs the player for something more. The theory goes that Poppy uses the player, another experimental subject, to systematically free the other toys. Not to help them, but to break the containment system that holds the prototype's consciousness in place. And by the end of that cycle, when all toys are dead or released, the prototype and Poppy may merge or will go face to face. A perfect reunion of father and daughter, of mind and machine. This reunion would allow Poppy to ascend, turning the factory itself into a living organism, spreading beyond its walls. The player's role was never meant to escape or uncover the truth. It was to complete the resurrection. That may be why she says, "We are so close. You can't leave me now." She doesn't mean physically. She means spiritually. You are a part of her, another soul in the system, helping bringing out the rebirth of Playtime Co's Twisted Utopia. Whether you see Poppy Playtime as a game of monsters, or a story of immortality and obsession, one thing is clear. Something truly sinister happened in that factory at the Hour of Joy. And as we dive deeper into the future chapters, we might not like what we find at the bottom of what the true motive of the prototype really is. However, with Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 releasing soon, hopefully, within the next year, we may get the answer to that question. First shot of this episode. Tammy picks this house.
Oh, what about that one?
Now, if you ask me, that is the, worst house you can pick. It has wallpaper on the outside, it has